Richard Feynman said, "Never confuse education with intelligence. You can have a PhD and still be an idiot." What are some real-life examples of this?
A doctor telling me my 6-month-old couldn't have strep because she was infant and taking her to the ER because she was getting worse and no urgent cares were open and finding out she had strep.
I worked for a statistician who had a PhD in statistics and was dumb as a post. OTRH, I worked with this really smart guy who happened to have a PhD, and as he said it, all that means is I did the work, for
I know many people in the science field that conduct double-blind randomized controlled experiments in the lab and then go home and check their.
I have a PhD and I am an idiot in most respects. All it takes to get a PhD is to be really good at or persistent in doing research in one narrow area of so several commenters pointed out that I simplified things too much. A PhD also requires hard work, luck, and some basic competence in a topic. But that doesn't preclude one from being completely clueless in other aspects of life.
Dr. Ben Carson, one of the most skilled neurosurgeons alive, thinking that the Egyptian pyramids were used to store grain.
I had a professor for higher mathematics who had real difficulties figuring out how to extract a cup of coffee from the vending machine. Bless him.
My ex had a real lack of knowledge and common sense when it came to children. She's currently completing her PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. She was confused though when I said I couldn't go out after putting my toddler to bed as I had no one to babysit. In her mind, once my daughter was asleep, she no longer needed anyone here to take care of, chalked it up to cultural differences and never being around children. Eventually though, our opinions on raising kids differed too much and I had to end things for my daughter's sarcade.
I had a student job doing IT for the classroom equipment at my college. My job wouldn't have existed if having a PhD meant you could figure out technology.
The best quote I've heard about this is, "They don't give PhDs to the smartest people. They give them to the most stubborn."
My wife's stepfather was a chemist who currently has diabetes. One night he went to the ER because his blood sugar was dangerously high. He claimed he was eating well, he normally doesn't, so there's no reason why his blood sugar was. His car was a 2-liter bottle of ginger ale mixed in with grape juice. He said that the two cancelled their sugars out and we didn't know what we were talking about because he was a chemist and he knows how to combine things.
My uncle is smart as multiple master's degrees in education and science, constantly wins awards for his teaching and high averages from his students. Tell me why this idiot needed me to remind him how to make ramen several times over.
I work with medical doctors all the time for work. Doctors are some of the dumbest smart people I have ever met. This is basically what The Best and the Brightest by David Halberstam is about. It tells the story of how the Kennedy and Johnson administrations got the United States into the Vietnam War, and it particularly zeroed in on Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. He kept escalating the conflict at every turn, and if you questioned him he could bury you in data showing that the US was winning the war and the Defense Department just needed more troops and more money to put us over the top. I'm grossly oversimplifying a great book, but that's the gist of it. A great companion piece to the book is a documentary called The Fog of War by Errol Morris. It's a one-on-one interview with Robert McNamara filmed near the end of his life where he ruminates on the lessons he's learned. After watching it, 90% of people come away from the experience thinking that McNamara is a particularly intelligent and sagacious man, even though there's a mountain of evidence showing that that's not the case.
Yep. I had to read his life story in school way before he got into politics, and he is genuinely really good at his job and his life story is interesting. I didn't realize how little he knew about other topics until he ran for president.
Dr. Oz. He really went to Harvard. He really is a university professor. He really did pioneer several cardiac surgery. He promoted hydroxychloroquine to fight COVID after reading about it on the internet. I don't mention the obvious scams that he flogs on his TV show because I don't think he really believes in them. I think it's an act he puts on just to scam gullible people.
I'd like to jump out of the window right now, but I can't get up because my stomach hurts from laughing too hard.
Hard agree. Source: I'm stubborn.
As someone who works security in a hospital, I can say a good 90% of the doctors there are smart but lack any type of common sense, and sometimes I wonder how they function on a day-to-day basis. Edit. I also forgot to mention I'm almost 2 years in a relationship with a pediatric cardiologist, and it's as shocking at home as it is with the ones I work with at, but I can't say it's boring.
To get a doctorate, you need to know absolutely nothing about a wide range of subjects.
Getting a PhD is knowing more and more about less and less until you know absolutely everything about nothing.
True. I quit my PhD. Everyone felt so sorry for me. They shouldn't. It was a great life move.
Peter Duesberg, molecular biologist who works as a researcher at UC Berkeley and has an otherwise stellar career and well known for his work, became an AIDS denialist, claiming there's no link between and AIDS. Led countless people down the rabbit hole, including many who were positive. These individuals ended up infecting others and refusing antiretroviral therapies. This included an AIDS denialist activist named Christine Maggiore who infected her infant through breastfeeding thinking, hey, it's not a big deal, it's just it doesn't cause.
The thing I learned most in academia, an area of learning, is don't get into academia.
I have a PhD, and I work with a bunch of PhDs. Basically, a lot of them think that because they succeeded in one area, they are an expert in every other area of life. And they always have strong opinions about everything. I think it's also called a PhD syndrome.
Got one better. Psych nurse here. Got a fax on a patient at a local for possible psychiatric admission. Frequent flyer of hours on my unit. Her blood pressure was through the roof, she had drooping on one side, body paralysis on one side, and slurred speech. Anyone with a hint of healthcare knowledge will tell you that those are classic signs of an active. So I call the thinking maybe they meant to send the fax to our medical unit and sent it to us by mistake. Nope. I said, you do know she's having a with those symptoms, right? ER nurse proceeds to tell me that the doc thinks she is faking those symptoms because she has a significant psychiatric history. I said, so you think she's faking a blood pressure of 280 165ths and body paralysis? She hung up on me. Our psychiatrist calls the back on speaker to find out what's going on. ER doctor tells her patient is faking these symptoms because, and I quote, schizophrenics cannot have strokes. Our psychiatrist asked him here he went to med school because they owed him a refund. Tears of joy.
I once spilled some food on the floor as I was plating it up. So I very carefully used a paper towel to wipe up that droplet of then yeeted my entire dinner and plate into the bin. I spent a good 5 seconds staring at the paper in my hand wondering how I was going to eat it, at which point husbando appeared and said, you have a
I work with lawyers and I'm convinced they trade every other brain cell they have for their law degree.
On a similar note, there are a whole bunch of American academics of Chomsky's vintage who are Cambodian genocide deniers. They think it's an American imperialist lie meant to make a communist regime look bad.
I once was a student resource coordinator at a university. Once a computer science professor was having trouble with the computer and projector displaying his presentation. The whole class laughed when I asked him if he checked his connections and it turned out his computer wasn't plugged in.
My mother has a PhD and she fell for a similar type of scam. Only hers was one of those Social Security, DEA agent scams. She ended up spending about $10,000 on Google Play gift cards. She still maintains she wasn't scammed too. In her mind, since she is a PhD, therefore intelligent, and wasn't elderly, she was 64 at the time, a scammer would not target her.
Holy, that is insane. I think that's less to do with PhD but an idiot in everything else, and more just not having experience with kids. I'm an only child, never hung around anyone younger than me as a child, none of my friends have kids, and I genuinely don't remember the last time I interacted with a child. Beyond passing them on the street. I know you shouldn't leave them alone in the house when they're sleeping because of safety reasons, but I'm completely clueless on how to handle them or what is normal or not. Lol.